Good evening, everyone. My name is Masi Gugutsa, and welcome to Campus Debates Season 2. Right before we start, our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the children who lost their lives in the fire tragedy at the Hillside and Arasha Academy in Nyeri County. Our hearts go as well to the children that were injured through the fire tragedy. We pray for a healing recovery throughout this journey. Now, on to this episode, we are having a semi-finals episode, the very first semi-finals, with the teams represented from the University of Nairobi and the Kenyatta University, who have been able to win their rounds and garnered enough points for them to participate in the semi-finals episode. Exciting, isn't it? For this particular episode, help me welcome side proposition representing the University of Nairobi, and side opposition, Kenyatta University. It is exciting that we equally have an amazing judging panel that I will allow to introduce themselves right before the speakers.
Hi, my name is Ndolo. I wish the teams all the best. We wish to have an engaging round, and congratulations for reaching the semis.
Hi, my name is Joy. Congratulations for reaching the semis and all the best in the round.
Hi everyone, my name is Leon. Once again, congratulations for reaching the semis. All the best.
As you have heard from the judges, they wish the speakers the very best and equal congratulations for making it to semi-finals. We would like to introduce the speakers to introduce themselves and tell us something they're expecting from this round particularly.
Hello, my name is Randy Mugambi. My expectations of this round would to definitely be have fun and absolutely dominate.
Hi guys, my name is Baraza Jane. I'm looking forward to also having an engaging debate as well, and yeah, to just have fun generally.
Side proposition wants to have fun with the debates. According to society, if you have fun, there's higher likelihood of winning. But who am I to set anything? Side opposition.
Hello, my name is John Mwendwa. I would also like to congratulate the judges for reaching semi-finals. It's not easy. I'm looking forward to hear what Prop has to say. I'm really curious.
Hi everyone, my name is Emmanuel. I'm just looking forward to an engaging debate. I know it is semis and I'm ready to be taken down.
From side opposition, one of the speakers is curious as to how this round would go and what proposition would say. For the other speaker, apparently, they're comfortable with being taken down at the semi-finals. Props to them for making semi-finals regardless. With that, I think you're ready to have an engaging debate. So the motion for this round reads, this house as a university scholarship fund targeted at marginalized identity groups would prioritize allocating funds based on merit rather than economic necessity. I repeat that. This house is a university scholarship fund targeted at marginalized identity groups would prioritize allocating funds based on merit rather than economic necessity. I believe it's going to be an engaging debate. With that, welcome the first speaker side proposition to start off the debate for us. Here.
Very important framing that you're going to get from my speech. First things first, what is a university? Because I think that's very important for us to understand. We think a university is just like a corporation, like any other corporation you'll find in the society. What then does this mean? It's looking to keep as much money as possible. Two, it's looking to spend as little money as possible so that it can direct this money to other things. What are then the university's incentives, right? So it's more likely to take actions that best protect their money as much as possible. This means that they're more likely to spend more time on money on things that they see benefit in. And what this means on an impact level, they're likely to spend money on things that give them merit, and merit give them success, like merit and give them surety of being able to succeed. Why is this true? The model of hierarchy in universities is a meritocracy. If you have more experience with more accolades and more achievements, you're hired faster, or two, you're even promoted faster. Why is this true? We think that also, like on a second level, priority to the best institutions or the best faculties in these universities to also motivate them to do better, right? But then secondly, even if they have like faculties that are performing poorly, they're also likely to plow money back to these faculties to also motivate them to do better. So now just generally, what then does excelling mean for a university, and like why essentially would this also be extrapolated to the scholarship fund? We think the scholarship fund is a proxy of the university targeted to like achieve or like practice the university's corporate social responsibility. What then does excelling for that university mean? It means three things. One, joy. It means that it gives this access more, like this university more access to like one, funding for research, two, to fund that scholarship fund by itself, but then three, to also expand the university's like outreach in terms of like internationally and even locally. The second level, Ndolo, what this tells you, that even in terms of like selection sports for things like COOPs, right, that excelling university is more likely to get first priority to choose the best students to be able, like according to its capacity, to be able to excel even generally, like on a very intuitive level. But then thirdly, what this tells you, Leon, is that prioritization of government funding from the education budget is more likely to get like to access to the best excelling university in that society. What then does this like mean for marginalized groups, and what then do we think these marginalized groups look like? One, we think they've been left out of the cycle of access to top universities. But anyway, even leave the top universities, access to institutions of higher learning. They have very little access to even going past university. Once they get to Form 4, even if you got an A, you're more likely to be the guy who's going to be taking like bananas from your farm to the market in Kisii or something like that. Secondly, we think that also on the narrative level in society, the narrative that society has built of them is that one, they've been painted in a bad light. This is a community that will never succeed. This is a community that say will never get access to like all these things like around funding, to gaining access to universities simply because they're not good enough. What then does this also tell you on a third level? This also tells you that there's probably a likelihood that there's a lot of untapped potential within that same area. What does this tell you? An urgency exists within that community to be able to change this narrative and remove that narrative from society for that marginalized community to get access. What then does this mean for that marginalized groups, for universities being able to like prioritize this thing in the first place, right? One, they're more likely to use the best people, the best performed students in that marginalized community to be able to achieve that change as fast as possible. Why is this true? A very intuitive level, if you have succeeded in primary, they more likely have done this. You probably went to a good high school, you got like Wings to Fly funding, and you probably succeeded because you know where you're coming from and all these things. We think that then the way change is activated for these people, if you prioritize the best students in that marginalized community, is that one, you're more likely to be taken as an ambassador of change simply because you understand where you come from. Then that university takes you in simply because of the fact that you did well. You understand the pressure to perform. You're more likely to perform even better in universities. And when you perform better in universities, you're more likely to gain access to even funding on a personal level, and you'll take this funding back to your community. But before I proceed, Mwendo, this would be a good time to talk.
Yeah. The guys we are not funding them because they can fund themselves.
And that's exactly what I'm telling you. It's very simple. At the end of the day, funding still gets to these communities anyway. Here's why you prove it better than anything these guys can say before they even talk. It's very simple. At the point where you fund the best students to be able to go to universities and all these things, this is more beneficial to you at the point where I prove to you you're more likely to become an ambassador of change. A very simple intuition pump, Joy. Malala Yousafzai. One, we think at the point where she got access to like international funding, she was able to plow this back, being a very good student off of where she came from in Afghanistan. She took that funding back to to even teaching these kids things like, say, the basic education levels. She took that same funding, that same access to like NGOs back to these communities to be able to achieve change, even on the basic education levels before they even get to like the institutions of higher learning. At the end of the day, we prove to you that one, change is more likely to be achieved on our end, where you use these students as paragons of change. But then just generally to wrap it up for universities, we think that the signaling effects are very simple. That there is efforts being made by universities to change marginalized communities, and these top universities are at the forefront of this change. And this can only be achieved if and only if Ndolo, these students are excelling. If they're not excelling, they're more likely to reinforce the narrative that these students will never do well even if you give them a chance. We think we have that better chance on our end. We take this from proposition. Thank you.
You have heard from side proposition. Their arguments are that universities are business. Because of that, they need a guarantee of success. I don't know what opposition has to say, so we welcome the first speaker, opposition, so that we can hear the engagements with proposition. Here.
So, panel, I think in each marginalized group, there exists a privileged minority. This looks like we are all black people in the United States, but you are Obama. The burden in this debate then becomes for proposition is that they need to show us why we should care for the privileged minority. This looks like why should we care for Obama's kid and not necessarily a son of a struggling rapper in Atlanta or something of the sort. Key contextualization in this particular debate is we think the students who are being considered in this debate have met the basic level of merit. This looks like in Kenya, you have a C+. So you have a C+ and you have a potential to thrive in university. So the debate then becomes, does the scholarship, as a scholarship model, do we prioritize the student with an A, or do we prioritize the student with a C? So why do we think then it is justified for us to even take these students based on their economic resources and need? One, this means that we don't fund students with high grades such as an A but have resources. So if you get an A but you have the ability to pay for yourself, we don't necessarily give you the scholarship. For those students, we tell them to use their own resources because we necessarily assess them. We look at your parents' money, we look at your tax, all these things, and we assess that your family is rich and necessarily you can afford a higher education for yourself. So then we don't fund you. We then prioritize students who are with lower grades. You got a C+, but you come from a poor family, you cannot necessarily afford higher education. We prioritize you. This means in our world, both these students go to school, both these students who have got the grade to go to university are able to access higher education. Notice in their world, only the students with higher grades from marginalized communities, which also have the ability to pay for themselves, necessarily go to school. And then if you get a C+ and you don't afford, you necessarily are not given the scholarships. Okay, impacts. We think then in our side of the world, we achieve utility. This looks like poor students from marginalized communities, one, they don't have access to resources and opportunities. So if they don't go to school, they are likely to result to things such as crime. Necessarily this leads them to jail, or even they can even die. Or two, they can necessarily go into selling drugs or something of the sort. Notice these poor students don't necessarily have shock absorbers. This looks like you don't come from a rich family. You don't come from a rich family whereby you have a C+, you have a grade to go to university, but as long as you cannot afford it, it is not a way that you will going to turn into business or something of the sort. So their primary means of making it in the society is primarily education. And so this makes them very vulnerable individuals. We think we are justified to prioritize them in this kind of thing. But why do we think then that the actor cares about these individuals? We think these scholarship funds are necessarily catered for these marginalized people. They are interested in giving education access, which means our world gives chance to educate the most vulnerable. That's the whole aspect of being a scholarship model. You need to meet the need-based. They operate based on need-based. So we think when you do all these, we think you necessarily get what the proposition are propagating or something of the sort. You necessarily get funding for research, expand international. They already exist in our side of the world. I don't know why they are necessarily propagating it. But we think then that even in our worst case scenario, if they in our worst case scenario, whereby if we take students who are not necessarily likely to thrive in these universities, we think it is justified because, one, these people were born in a poor family, so they they went to a public school, so they didn't have access to books, they didn't have access to quality teachers. That means that the grade they got does not necessarily equate to their potential. But most importantly, for these students, they are able to get essential skills. They are able to network within the university. They are able to enter the society and work. We think then this becomes important because on their best case scenario, they want to argue that there exists no incentive for people to fund as a university to thrive as a business model. They want to say that these students are not able to thrive. But our framing takes out their framing, because once we tell you that these students have already met the basic needs for you to enter university, we necessarily take their framing out. Proud to win from OP.
So you have heard from proposition and opposition. The basic question is, do you think university funding models should prioritize meritocracy over the whole idea of economic necessity? I don't know what you think at home, but feel free to message us at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates and let us know what you think. But before that, we'll be going on a short commercial break, and once we are back, we'll get to hear further from the speakers on stage. Thank you so much for choosing to hang on with us for the second half of Campus Debates semi-finals. What has happened in the first half? Side proposition has argued that the university needs to actively fund itself like a profit business, which means they have a guarantee of success, and the only way success can be guaranteed is through meritocracy. But then, from side opposition, they argue you need to cater to the minorities that exist within society. Why? It is not their fault that they failed their exams or got their C+, but rather the circumstances that revolved around that situation. So I don't know who best caters to minorities, but for further clarity, we welcome the second speaker proposition to further their argument. Here.
Chair, we think that discrimination is a harsh reality that most minorities tend to deal with every day, and it is not ending anytime soon. Secondly, we have people in society who always want to uphold the savior complex in society, and they always want to show they're able to cater for these minority groups anyway. Two pieces of clarity then. One, I feel like at the point you're talking about priority, we're looking at a situation where it is of crucial importance in and of itself. We're going to accept the framing that they give us because, one, we feel like minorities, these are people who've always faced a barrier of entry, having a difficulty to access these sort of things anyway. But I feel like what we need to understand is now what is the best way for a specific struggling society to go about, especially when accessing a very elitist thing, because we have to understand what scholarships essentially actually entail. Essentially, scholarships look like they're giving you funding and they expect you to perform within a specific level so that they're able to accept or even receive the best materialization of benefits anyway. Two pieces of responses to their material before we get onto our case. One, firstly, we don't even understand why this debate is going to be about privileged minorities. I feel like from the setting itself, we're trying to talk about people who've been having a difficulty in accessing this sort of education anyway, so we don't understand where the entire idea of becoming a rap or even such alternatives are going to stand within this debate. One, they say that, oh, we're going to have a situation where we are willing to bite the bullet, and we have a situation where even if you get a C, we'd rather give you the access to education in itself. Two pieces of responses to this. One, we feel like this is not only going to be harsh for these individuals essentially, because listen to how I started my debate, I was able to explain to you how specifically scholarships actually tend to work. There are certain expectations that you as an individual have to meet for you to be able to let me say, even maintain this scholarship. There have been instances where these organizations even tend to rescind these scholarships at the point you are not even able to perform towards these standards. What then does this mean? It means at the point you are able to put merit, we're able to put in students who are able to perform within the capability, and they're able to essentially withhold these specific sort of scholarships because they're having the best capacity to perform and to be able to maintain these scholarships anyway. We feel like them being able to just take on the trade-off as to say that, oh, we'd rather just give them the access anyway. These students are essentially going to suffer even within this model, and they feel like that is a harm that they're not able to escape from in such an instance. On to our material. One, I feel like Randy has done sufficient analysis and explaining why specifically universities tend to operate as corporations. They have a certain a certain criteria, and they have a certain image that they essentially tend to actually want to like maintain. You're not going to get enough analysis from me specifically as to why it is going to be important for these students who have merit to access these sort of scholarships, and why it is even going to now lead to better benefits to materialize towards these marginalized communities anyway. I feel like the concept of merit comes on two instances. One, there's a certainty of performance and ability to do better, and secondly, there's a good chance that these are people who are able to like withstand this sort of like obstacle that they've actually been able to experience. Because there's a situation where a black student, people will necessarily call you black, yes, but you are smart. At the end of the day, you are able to like perform and give better output towards these organizations. This is something that they are willing to like withhold, and they're willing to protect these individuals in any way. They feel like at the point where you're able to like perform and give them like the best materialized benefits, they're willing to keep you as an individual within this society. What then does this imply? At the point where these scholarship funds are going to like produce the best people within society, it necessarily actually signals the ability or like the potential of having like good individuals, so like good citizens, not citizens, like the best crop of individuals within these minority groups who are at least giving a promising sort of like idea towards society anyway. Because listen, on their side, at the point where you just want to take a student who essentially got a C, and you just take them with the entire ideas to how we just want them to essentially just go there and get the access, but they do not even have the guarantee to be able to like perform in such an instance, what then does this look like? One, a high likelihood of them rescinding your scholarship. Secondly, you're going to suffer from a lot of pressure because you do not even have the academic capability to be able to perform in such an instance. On comparative, on our side, we're having a situation where we're having students who have the ability to perform within this area, but secondly, they have a chance to be able to like maintain these scholarships. At the end of the day, the signal that we tend to send within society is that we have minorities who have the best capability to thrive and even like emancipate themselves from the economic disparities that they actually face within society. And that is essentially why Randy was talking about the entire narrative that already exists within society. What then do you get on weighing? But before I got into weighing, let me listen to Mwendo.
Yeah. Are you saying that only A students succeed in universities?
Not essentially. What we are trying to argue in this debate is that at the point where, okay, you guys actually brought about the entire idea of having the grades anyway, but we're still willing to bite the bullet and say that at the point where we're having an A student who's able to essentially perform towards the capability of withholding the scholarship, essentially, we feel like it is very important for them, because this essentially actually just sends like the virtue signaling within society. One, what do minorities essentially bring to the table? They have brains, they're able to like give the best output towards society. We feel like this is essentially important for them. What then does this look like on harms analysis? I feel like on their side, you're having a situation where there are high chances of these people being barred from accessing this sort of idea, because you're just taking people who can perform within the bare minimum, and you expect them to essentially be able to like emancipate these certain groups like within society. But secondly, you're also putting the students within these sort of ideas to actually essentially like succumb to a lot of pressure which they're not necessarily even able to like essentially work on. And you feel like on weighing the severity of harm that exists on their side is that you're not only actually putting students who are not even within the best capacity within this sort of idea, but secondly, you're also barring most minority groups from being able to like access this funding anyway, which is not beneficial for the universities or the students in such an instance. Proud proposition.
We have heard from the second speaker proposition trying to prop up the argument from their side. I don't know what Mwendo has to say from side opposition, but we welcome the second speaker opposition. Hear, hear.
Life is an unfair game. Some people make it to finals, some people lose at semi-finals. What's the case for opposition in this debate? Prop misses nuance on minorities. Minorities means, yes, you are marginalized, there's lack of access to opportunities and all of these things, but it also means within minorities, there are privileged minorities. That's why my partner uses the example of, we are all black, but I'm the son of Obama, and you are the son of somebody in Atlanta slums. We are minorities, but we are not the same. Realize, panel, if all of you are worth $2, it is impossible for me to prioritize based on economic resources. By the mere fact that I can prioritize among the three of you on economic resources means one of you is richer than the others and one of you is poorer than the others. That's the nuance in this debate. What this means is that in our world, what we do is realize, we already tell you these people have met the basic minimum requirement, because there's a basic minimum requirement to go to universities. Universities can't fund you if you don't meet that basic minimum requirement. Like that is equivalent to breaking the law. What it means then, we look at these people who have met this basic requirement. We look at who can fund themselves and who can't. That is to say, if all of you have an A, but Leon comes from Karen and Leon can fund himself, we don't fund Leon. But Ndolo comes from Mathare, he has an A as Leon, but Ndolo can't fund himself, we prioritize Ndolo based on economic resources. But even if Ndolo has a C and Leon has an A, we still prioritize Ndolo because he can't fund themselves. At the end of the day, Leon still goes to the university because they have the resources, and Ndolo goes to the university because we give them the access to do this. The biggest case from prop is to say these people will not succeed. This is a lie. Most of you here never got an A to go to university, but most of you here are succeeding in university. Most of you here are not engineers and doctors. That means you never got an A, but you are succeeding. The basic argument is to say we have C, B, B minus, B plus students in universities, including the ones where they come from. In fact, they should have told us their grade in this debate, such to satisfy. And these people still succeed. Why? One, you already meet the basic minimum requirement, meaning you have satisfied the government that you have the skills, you have the potential, and you have the hard work to succeed within a university system. That's why they set that as the basic requirement, because anyone above that means they can succeed. But secondly, what it means is that all the reasons they give on their wall for people succeeding, oh, you know where you come from, so you have an incentive to work hard, you want to succeed and get a better future for your family. All of those incentives still exist on our side for those people to succeed anyway. So if the biggest case is they want people to succeed so they can change narratives, so they can get more funding, people succeed on our world anyway. Just because you got a C plus doesn't mean you don't succeed, Randy.
You are steering this debate away from like what it essentially is. At the point where you're trying to argue on how governments can essentially look at the people who are able to succeed, we can also argue how they're able to filter out the privileged minorities that you essentially look like before they give you the scholarship anyway.
Yeah, and that's what we are doing. We are filtering out the privileged minorities. That's essentially what this debate is doing. But beyond that, we say that they give a very one. We already say these people succeed. But beyond that, it's about donations, because they say universities will lose donations if minorities don't succeed. Let's take our worst case scenario and you say these people don't succeed. You don't lose funding. Why? The people who give you funding is not just the government. You also have donors, people who are like independent actors such as, let's say, Emmanuel funding KU. The reason they give you money is because they care about minorities and they want to provide access of opportunity to these people. So the basic requirement you need to meet for them is just to provide opportunities to minorities and provide them the essential resources within that university to succeed. Whether they succeed or not is really not up to the university, but up to them as individuals. At the end of the day, as long as you provide opportunities for people, we think you'll still get donors, even at our worst case scenario where these people fail. But beyond that, we think they don't have a case, because the whole case is that these people will not succeed because they never got an A. We think that's a lie, because they beat the basic requirement. They have all the incentives to work hard, such as being from a poor background, and they have resources within the university, such as libraries and lecturers to utilize. We think we get these people to succeed anyway. We help the most marginalized people. They help rich kids from Karen. We are very proud to fight for the Kibera and all.
You have heard the arguments from both proposition and opposition. I don't know which side was able to sway you to determine which team best caters to the minorities that exist within society. I don't know if you who are watching us are a minority based off of the examples you have been given, but if you are, I hope the government gets to prioritize you while giving you the university fund based on either models. With that said, we'll be going on a short commercial break, and once we are back, we will get to hear from the judges as to who was able to sway them better for this semi-final episode. Okay? Thank you so much for hanging on to the third segment of the semi-finals episode, where we have the University of Nairobi debating against Kenyatta University for their semi-finals round. The motion has been around the idea as to whether university funding models should prioritize merit over economic necessity, especially for minorities that exist within societies. I know you have a comment and I know you want to share a sentiment about the issue. Feel free to message us on X at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates. And so, the judges have decided they are not yet convinced by the debaters on set, but they equally want to give them one more chance to determine who gets to make to finals and who doesn't. With that, I will invite the judges to ask a question to proposition and a question to opposition.
Okay, my question goes to side prop, and before I ask the question, I'd like to congratulate you guys for the amazing debate. So my question is short and simple. What will happen to the SC students?
To side opposition, the question is simple. If there is no guarantee of success to side opposition, and there's people who have better qualifications than you, what is the justification to constantly fund these people? Is it just because they are poor, or there's better justification from your end?
We have had the questions from the judges. The question for side proposition is, what then happens to C students within such societies? But the question to side opposition is, if success is not the metric, then what happens to societies or the funding models that cannot access these resources in the first place? With that, we welcome side proposition to respond to that question. Here.
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that question. But fortunately, they do. They tell you that at the point where you've met the basic qualifications to join a university, they concede to a framing that it's a meritocracy. It's your merit that gets you through the door. We think that's the same response we give to that question. That one, at the point where you want not just access to funding, but sustainability of the same, at the point where Baraza tells you that scholarships are elitist, they're more likely to want a return on investment, you will prioritize success. Success and continuity of success and continuity to funding only occurs exclusively to government side. But anyway, if you have no doubts, like if you still have doubts, we think we prove it to you better in terms of vulnerability. These guys are running a bougie case where like this exists in like the States or something like that. If you don't have access to things, if you can't succeed in education, you can become a rapper. Bro, you're from Kisii. If you don't succeed in like books, you will never succeed in anything else. They're more likely to prioritize success in books over anything else. These guys can't win. They concede to our framing. We take this debate from the beginning of my first minute.
The question from the panel is, in the worst case scenario where success is not guaranteed, what's the justification to continually fund these students? Two responses. First, success is really not guaranteed on either side, because even if you get an A, you guys have seen a lot of people get A's and drop out of university. So, you know, even those people fail. But secondly, the justification is not just that you are poor. The justification can also be you met the basic minimum requirement for you to be there. Yeah, so that can be a justification. You met the basic minimum requirement, so we are kind of justified to fund you. But beyond that, Randy can say, I don't know, we concede to some framing. The debate happens in a university. There has to be a basic minimum grade, and then you have to choose among the like 5,000 students, who are you prioritizing to fund, because resources are not infinite, and you know you can't fund everyone. So how do you prioritize?
Well, for speakers, judges, and anyone who's watching us, you have gotten to hear from the speakers on set today. Their semi-finals episode has been to determine whether university funding models should prioritize merit over economic necessity, and I think we've been able to hear the arguments from both proposition and opposition. I don't know which one swayed you, but even as we wait for judges to give us the deliberation, feel free to message us on X at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates. Let us know which team swayed you and which team convinced you as to which funding model should be used for university students. We now welcome the judges to give us the call that they had for this round. Tell us, who do you think makes it to the finals?
Okay. So I'll just start off by a brief summary of the cases that we captured and then go into the call and the justification later on. So from proposition, we caught two things. One is the fact that universities are operating as corporations and as businesses. As such, they need to have something that ensures long-term success for themselves. So meritocracy will be the best way to go. Secondly is the fact that these students can be used as paragons of change within their societies, and they can be used as signals of change. And therefore, they can be able to impact their societies after they've benefited from the education that they get from universities. From opposition, they talk about the fact that even within marginalized groups, there are privileged groups that exist, and as such, it will be very unfair to prioritize them, given that there are certain benefits that they get from being a privileged group. And therefore, they talk about the fact that for us to get better utility, we need to therefore go with economic necessity, given that we benefit those who most need it. So by a slim, it was a rather slim margin, we gave the call to the opposition. And the reason for that is they talk about the fact that there needs to be a lot of nuance in terms of assessing the merit of these underprivileged people, these marginalized identity groups. And that's why the whole question of the C student keeps on coming in, because we need to acknowledge the fact that there are, even within marginalized identity groups, there are people who are privileged within those groups. So that's why we find things such as the talented 10th, we find things such as those who essentially have gotten access to these resources, and therefore they're going to be able to fund themselves. Now, if we do it on the basis of a merit, these are people who have already benefited from the circumstances around them. Therefore, they're more likely to get this funding when they don't necessarily need it, as opposed to people who come from generally poor backgrounds within those marginalized identity groups. That being said, congratulations to both teams, and congratulations to KU for proceeding to the finals. Thank you.
Massive, massive congratulations to Kenyatta University for yet again beating the complex and being able to satisfy their curiosity by ensuring they have made it to the finals episode. So you're guaranteed definitely seeing Kenyatta University for a later episode trying to fight for their lives one last time at their finals episode. On the other hand, we equally congratulate University of Nairobi for making it so far within the debate space. They've been able to debate, fight for their lives, but equally try to defend funding models based off of merit, which I think is a very difficult thing to do, especially within minority societies. But regardless, they put their best foot forward and their best arguments as well. I don't know whether we'll see them again in the future rounds, but with that, I think you can hold at the edge of your seat for a probability of a resurface of University of Nairobi. That has been the show for tonight. We've been able to understand how funding models particularly work and whether they should be based on merit or economic necessity. And for every student who has just joined university, congratulations for being able to meet the basic requirements as side opposition has stated and being able to qualify for university level within education structures. With that, we will see you next week on Monday at 8 p.m. Same time, same place with me, Masivu Gutsa. Okay, yeah.